the Chase Thomas Podcast, for people who have nothing but time to kill.
My other favorite part of winter meetings is all the 19 to 22-year-olds walking around in ill-fitting suits and with like 20,000 copies of their resume, just handing them out to pretty much anyone passing by, being like, "Can you please hire me for a Major League Baseball job?" Scott Boras should just hire one of those kids. I mean, they're all there right away.
I mean, why not? John,
yes.
This is kind of a different question, but we're staying in the AL East here. I'm curious, what happened in your estimation? How would you explain what happened in the Blue Jays offense the most this year?
A lot of it, I think, was just Vlad Guerrero never really got on track in any capacity. I mean, if you were to make a pie chart, I'd say that's probably like 40% of it. Then you have to add some amount of George Springer age decline, Bo Bichette's injury, Matt Chapman disappearing from the month of May onward. That was a really big one. They got like a 650 OPS out of him for like 4 straight months. Really not ideal.
Yeah.
I think that's probably the biggest chunk of it. Similarly, I think the Dalton Varsho trade really didn't pan out in 2 different directions. 1, Varsho himself was not all that productive. 2, it forced the Blue Jays into a situation where they were stuck with Alejandro Kirk and Danny Jansen behind the plate. Kirk obviously took a big step backwards last year. Jansen was hurt most of the season. They could have had Gabriel Moreno instead, but obviously they gave him up to Arizona for Varsho, as well as Lourdes Gurriel Jr., who I've never been terribly big on Lourdes Gurriel Jr., but he's a professional hitter who, at the very least, gives an element. He can lengthen a lineup. That wasn't there in Toronto really last year. I'd say it was a confluence of things. I think if you're the Blue Jays, the biggest worry you have is, like, which version of Vlad Jr. are we getting at this point in time? Are we getting the MVP candidate from a couple years ago? Are we getting the guy who just hits 55% ground balls and is just visibly not running full effort on some of these things and just whose power seems to come and go in spurts? I think, he's kind of the guy everything hinges around. Similarly with Bichette, I think they feel better about Bichette, who's a more steady presence. Yeah. I think the question is how healthy can Bichette stay? The Blue Jays have definitely have questions to figure out this offseason. I think the big one is, what do they do at third base? Do they bring back Chapman? Do they go in another direction? There isn't really a good third base option on the market besides Chapman. I don't know off the top of my head if there are any trade possibilities that make sense. Maybe it's something like, if the Reds really are interested in moving Jonathan India, maybe there's something to be done there where you kind of reshuffle the infield around him. I'm not really sure. But yeah, I mean, Toronto's got some things to figure out, but I think a lot of it is just kind of internal in terms of we need Guerrero to be better. We need George Springer to be better. We need Bichette to stay healthy. We need a good, solid third base production, whether that's Chapman or someone else. We need a step forward again from Kirk, because I don't think you can trust Jansen as a full-time starter as a catcher. There are some issues, but I think a lot of them is just they're kind of expecting guys to bounce back. There's not really a whole lot I think they can do free agency wise either for a hitter. I think Bellinger would be another guy I think would make sense for them as their full-time center fielder. But I don't know if that's a part of the market. I don't know if they're willing to go that deep into the free agent pool in terms of spending. Because I don't see Bellinger signing for anything less than $150 million. And again, this team has to figure out at some point in the near future long-term extensions if they want to for Bichette and or Guerrero. So I imagine to a certain degree they kind of want to keep some of that powder dry before trying to figure out before spending it willy-nilly in free agency.
Yeah, and I don't know where they're going to go, John. I'm
don't know either.
Curious.
Toronto,
the Blue Jays are a sneaky, really interesting winter team to me.
Yeah, Toronto, they haven't been talked about a lot, I think, in part because I think last season was kind of a disappointment, and they don't really fit in that same mold of AL contender as like Houston and Texas and Tampa and Baltimore. They're very clearly kind of a step down.
But we didn't think that going into last year, because we've been all in on their core. Like, the Blue Jays have really done everything right. It's not like you can look at Ross and be like, what were y'all thinking here? I mean, outside of the starting pitching, maybe I think the
bullpen too. I would not be surprised if Toronto put some real significant resources in their relievers this offseason. I know offense was a problem for them, and I think they should do something there. But again, I think a lot of that is we need Vlad Jr. to be better. We need Bichette. We need Bo Bichette to stay healthy. Like, there's nothing free agency wise you can do to make any of that different. DH, I think,
a bad
is another
vibe team too, right? Like clubhouse vibe. There was some stuff there.
I think otherwise DH would be a place that they could target, and that would obviously be Ohtani, but I'd be curious to know what Ohtani's interest level would be in Toronto.
They popped up, didn't they? Well, they were a weird team that popped up for Ohtani last week.
I think every like very viable contender has popped up at one point or another.
I mean, the Pirates have not popped up for Ohtani.
No, I don't think Ben Sherrington is practicing his casual Japanese in order to address Ohtani and his agents.
Yeah,
but, I mean, I've seen Boston brought up as a potential Ohtani.
Yeah, didn't he isn't that a New Balance thing?
It's a New Balance thing in large part, but
I love the idea. And honestly, when people look, let me tell you this. Here's the take grass. Ohtani's very image conscious, and he's very brand conscious because like he doesn't talk, like he didn't talk to the media in forever. He has a very like strict, he has some Kawhi Leonard to him, and not just because of the New Balance connection there, but like just very quiet, very just look, I'm the best player in basketball, I'm the best player in baseball, I have a lot of sway here. I am here to make as much money as humanly possible. And that's just it. Like, that's what this business is. And y'all don't care about me. And
go. Nicely done, nephew. The Chase Thomas podcast. Hell yeah.